The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
Hooray for Hollywood, where stars are living large, in mansions with their servants and their credit cards in charge, with fame that's fleeting, but the egos never change, where everyone's a genius, except the ones who really arrange. Hooray for Hollywood, where the scandals always sell, where every whispered secret is a new tabloid's tell. Oh, how we adore the endless red carpet galore. Hooray for Hollywood, where less is always more.
What you all don't see is me dancing in the green room to our theme music before we start the show.
You're all better off. You're better off not seeing Mark dance.
I try so hard to make you laugh. Like, I'm trying to get your reaction. I'm trying to get your attention is really what's happening. Like, hey, look at me. And you're just like, 2 hours of this shit.
Why do you think my attention is divided?
No, okay. That's your takeaway from that minute of dialogue. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, why do you come here? This is a Radulich Broadcasting Network premiere podcast. Damn you, Hollywood! And here's your host. If you've got a statement, he will have the wrong take. Robert Winfree, yay!
Okay, hang on. I now have to unpack this with you a little bit because I genuinely don't understand your. You said what I'm trying to do is get your attention.
Yeah.
So my question is, why do you think my attention is divided?
Well, you're not like looking or laughing at what I'm doing. I can tell you're like looking askance. You're like your attention is clearly not on me where it should be.
Okay. Okay. I'm able to.
First of all, hang on. Don't you also have like 87 tabs open and like YouTube videos all going at once? You're like your Marty McFly Jr.
Okay, they're not going.
Oh, okay.
Not doing anything.
I didn't know if you ever turned them off.
I have an auto tab discarder, so anytime they sit idle for too long, they're not actively taking up any sort of processing units. And I have a bunch that I go through because when I see something come across my homepage, like I'm interested in this, I'll open like 4 videos at a time, but they won't open and play until I actually get to the tab. So I'll just go, then when I'm done with one, I just close it. Instead of trying to scroll through the recommended or what else you might like. When I see them, I know what I want, so it's easier to open other tabs and then close them as I get done with them.
Does your brain need that much stimulus at any given time? And that's a serious question. Or is it?
Not especially.
Okay.
Again, the answer to that is sort of, depending on where I am. It's almost like physically geographic.
No, well, kind of, maybe, yes.
I can't quite get all the way to yes because I'm perfectly capable of being just like alone and quiet and not doing anything
without any stimuli at all.
Yeah,
but I do. But it does seem like your brain is Audrey too, and the blood that it needs is as much stimuli as possible. But as to not overfeed the thing, and because we all have to sleep sometime. There are moments where, like, you kind of like me. My son actually asked me earlier today. He was like, "Why is your room always dark?" And then I was like, "Because I am constantly overstimulated, and I manage it okay, being who that I am, because I can deal with a lot of stimulation. But every once in a while, I have to go to my cave and block everything out, or bad Mark's going to come out and I'm going to start snapping at people." Speaking of which, ladies and gentlemen,
I have to address this.
Can I please fucking introduce her?
All right, you just
you
brought up 2 points, and now
you have the memory of an elephant. Have some self-control.
All right.
And if I don't introduce her soon, she's gonna do the usual "Why am I here?" routine. So, ladies and gentlemen, the queen of "Is anyone gonna pay attention to me?" Ladies and gentlemen, Honeysuckle Rose Creations, our good friend Alexis Hejna. How do you do, my friend?
Doing well. Sorry for running just a few minutes late. Had a few things I was taking care of, and they ran a little longer than I thought they were going to.
You're
So
fine.
Yeah,
At least
happens.
you show up. All right. Now, what is your problem in life, sir?
The second half of your statement about why you were asking if I'm paying attention is the assumption that more of my attention makes your jokes and bits funnier, and I will react the way you want me to.
You're overcomplicating this. It is literally, Daddy, pay attention to me. Tell me I'm good, and the only way I know to do that is to be funny. Hooray for Hollywood! Ah! Am I good? Now we can get past my own mental health issues.
okay, so I'm assuming I missed something, and I'm just going to ignore it. So I'll just ask: wasn't Jason supposed to be joining us tonight?
He's sick, like everybody else that
Okay.
ever asked to come on my podcast.
See
Anywho,
Mark's previous quip about you being reliable.
Yeah. The only thing
Fair enough. Hey, I just found out today my dad is horribly sick. Everyone, there is some nasty cold thing going around right now. It's really ugly.
I got
There
it a few
is-
weeks ago.
There
Yeah,
is
it's
a
not fun.
conversation to be had about the gravity of communicable diseases due to ongoing climate change, but I'm going to annoy somebody if I do that. So, hey, what are we talking about tonight, Robert?
Communicable disease, believe it or not.
Due to both man-made and natural climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, if we could direct you to the books from Harvard University regarding ice cores and trees. Please continue.
Yeah, of those two, I'm more worried about the trees than the ice cores because
Well, it's the ice cores that were captured in the trees that could give you data regarding temperature changes.
I'm
from, like,
aware of
thousands of years ago.
I'm aware of the scientific value of both of them. I'm more worried about what the trees indicate than the ice cores because the ice cores are so large over such a giant period of time
Mm-hmm.
that while they're useful for data aggregation, they're not necessarily as immediate. Whereas most trees have not had catastrophic lifespans. The average iceberg or the average glacier, on the other hand, has been there since before the dinosaurs.
You we don't want to talk about a movie when this happens, by the way.
Anyway, we're talking about Wolfman, Leigh Whannell's latest take on that.
Hang on. I
particular-
want to give Alexis praise. That was good. You just didn't say anything. That was perfect. Keep doing it. You were like, I've lost interest in this. I don't want to be here. And up went something across my face, as opposed to blurting something out. And I love it. Keep doing it.
And once again, I get the feeling.
Please take the praise.
Oh, I'm taking it. I'm just also
Okay.
noting that once again, I'm probably going to be the only one who has anything positive to say about this movie.
It must be a fucking Tuesday. Continue, Robert.
Oh, it's a Monday, first of all.
It's a day that ends in Y. That's just what I should have said. Take two.
Yeah,
Must
because
be a
we
day
used
that
to
ends
be
in
on.
Y.
Look, we used to do this every Tuesday, and then a couple of years, then like what, last year, 18 months ago, you switched us back to Mondays.
And now
Yeah.
I'm the one that works every Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're talking about Wolfman, which is comes to us from director Leigh Whannell, produced
if you
by
don't know who Leigh
Blumhouse.
Which, if you don't know who Leigh Whannell is, well, you should. Leigh Whannell. I love that joke.
He also
Leigh-
directed The Invisible Man, which we reviewed a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I'm gonna do his feature filmography here.
Gonna say this is the guy who wrote Saw. He gave us the Saw franchise and the Insidious franchise. This
Yeah.
man is really good with horror. I like to think because he has a knack for. I like to think Leigh Whannell's tactic is leaving in more of it to the imagination of the audience.
So
Yo-
he was a writer and director and executive producer on Wolfman. Other things that he specifically was the writer, director, and executive producer on, so we can do a comparison and contrast, are The Invisible Man, which was 100 times better than this.
I'll get to that.
Upgrade from 2018.
Oh, I loved Upgrade.
He wrote and directed Insidious Chapter 3, and that was actually his directorial debut. And yes, Alexis, prior to that, he wrote the first 3 Saw movies. He wrote Dead Silence. He wrote the first 2 Insidious movies. He wrote something called Cooties and The Mule. So that is Leigh Whannell.
Yeah. And this is his take on the fairly classic, werewolf, wolfman kind of story.
Yep,
Because-
Wolfman.
Say
is a
because Universal decided that after Tom Cruise destroyed their Dark Universe franchise, they just gave the keys to Whannell and said, you know what, just do what the hell you want.
The Wolfman is a reboot, or rather, Wolfman is a reboot of The Wolfman from 1941. It stars Christopher Abbott, Julia Garner, and Sam Jaeger. The plot follows a family man seeking to protect his wife and daughter from a werewolf, only become infected and slowly transform into the creature. This is another Blumhouse production. Boy, if there's ever a studio, you win some, you lose some. Tain't easy. It's fucking Blumhouse. All right.
Yeah, they've got about the same batting average as A24.
That was literally what I was about to say.
When A24 hits, they actually tend to do like all the prestige stuff.
Yeah.
So when A24 hits, they get all of the Oscars.
Speaking of which, did you guys see did you guys get the trailer for Death of a Unicorn? Because that looks like it's going to be my new favorite movie this year.
I cannot wait to see that.
Yeah, you're going to love that. I'm pretty sure.
We've already opted for that same weekend to do Working Man, and I'm going to stick with it. But I've already pleaded to Chris and Neil, please do Death of a Unicorn so I can come on your show and do it.
I'd be willing to swap that over to Death of a Unicorn.
No, you already told me Working Man.
We didn't have that release date for that one yet. Come on, man. You and I both know this is a work in progress.
What was Working Man? The Jason Statham movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, which I want to do that one too.
It's the Blue Collar Hitman Avengers.
Yeah, it's got. I think
It's Beekeeper Part 2.
I think Sylvester Stallone wrote it. It was David Ayer directing, Jason Statham starring, and written by Sylvester Stallone. It's I kind of want to do it now, but I also need to do Death of a Unicorn because that looks amazing. And once again, anything but to talk about this movie. So here are the Wolfman movies, if we could talk about that for a moment. So we have the original 1941 The Wolfman, which was followed by, and I'm reading this right off the Wikipedia page if you want to argue with me. In 1943, we have the Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, directed by Roy William Neill, then House of Frankenstein, then House of Dracula, then the famous award-winning prestige film Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
That is, if you have never seen that, people, do yourself a favor. It is one of the best things you'll ever see.
Definitely in the top 3 of best Abbott and Costello films of all time.
Yeah, I've actually never seen any of those. Shut up, all of you. Those are all the Universal Classic Monster movies. These are the standalone films. Alvin and the Chipmunks Meet the Wolfman. Van Helsing, of all of this list, is the only one I've actually seen. And House of the Wolfman. Let me stop there. So now I can bring you guys in. Pardon this interruptus. Have you seen all of those up to this point, Robert?
Most.
Yeah. What is, in your opinion, sort of the enduring legacy of the Wolfman that we keep doing this? And before you answer that, let me finish the list here, because there's only one more movie left. There was a remake called The Wolfman starring Benicio del Toro, directed
Anthony
by Joe
Hopkins,
Johnston.
Hugo Weaving.
Yeah,
Worst CGI of all time.
That was from 2010.
Yes, it was. I saw it.
So again, the Universal Classic Monster movies have been with us, for going on almost 100 years here.
Since the dawn of cinema, basically.
Yeah, and some of them, we talked about Dracula when we discussed Nosferatu. I'm just curious because I haven't really looked into it. I haven't given it much thought, unlike I did with Dracula. But I think it does bear repeating that conversation. What's the enduring legacy of the Wolfman?
Well, it's mostly responsible, the original, for kind of codifying and really putting out into public consciousness some of the rules in play for the werewolf myth, which is actually quite old. Various, any kind of shape-shifting skinwalkers, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of codified that. It also set mostly the tone for, I can't say every iteration of werewolf story, but anytime you do a singular wolf man, which is kind of what we've got here, it kind of established a handful of the narrative beats of the tropes that you're going to work with. And some, for better and for worse, some people are better at playing with that than others. It's also, to kind of talk about, again, the legacy of the Wolfman is more to look at the legacy of what werewolf films in general have done.
Oh, it's probably a better place to start that question.
That's okay. Because, well, absent the Wolfman, you don't get those. You don't get Dog Soldiers or Ginger Snaps or American Werewolf in London or
Teen Wolf.
Or Teen Wolf 2.
That's right. Starring Jason Bateman.
I was going to go with The Howling because I'm a more serious connoisseur of this, but okay. Mark's love of the teenage / early collegiate soft rom-com masquerading as...
If you're going to do that, I have to say, we really need to bring Alexis into the conversation, but I have to say, one of my favorite film memories as a kid is the scene where Michael J. Fox turns into the werewolf and while he's playing basketball, and the guy's like, okay, let's just embrace this, let's do it. And they play that like weirdo kind of like folky country-ish pop song where the opening line is, first my clothes catch on fire, then my car hits a tree. And to this day, I still love that song, and I love that scene, and I love Teen Wolf. And there is a window into my brain.
Just more than a window.
Garage
So,
door opening.
Alexis, you are a little bit like me in the sense that you dabble in more of the horror elements of things. So, again, there's a lot of werewolf stories out there. I still kind of think we haven't done something better than Dog Soldiers since Dog Soldiers, personally. But
well, the idea of werewolves, unlike things like Dracula and Frankenstein, which have a clear-cut origin story, where the story of people who turn into wolves have been around since the dawn of time. I actually just got a little list here, including the idea of a werewolf has popped up in the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Greek legend of King Lycaon. I don't know how you pronounce
how do you
it.
spell it?
Lycaon.
Lycian?
I think it's Lycium, but it could be a Lycian. Like I
Probably.
don't know
if there's a werewolf popping up, there's a non-trivial chance it's Lycian.
Yeah. The Norse saga, the Volsungs. So this is a legend that has been around for ages, and I like to think it's also a legend that we can play around a little bit more since there is so many variations on it. We've seen tons of different story arcs on werewolves, and I think that's what attracts us to the story arc, is that unlike Dracula, Frankenstein, things like that, where there are very specific rules, with the stories of werewolves, we can play around a little bit more and kind of bend it to our own will. You want them to transform all the time and not just the full moon? Fine, you got it. You want them to just be unholy monsters who can turn into vampires? There's actually a Greek legend that did that. The Greek historian Herodotus described a nomadic group of people called the Neuri, who said transformed into wolves for several days a year. And ancient traditions may believe that the werewolves could become vampires after being killed. There is a huge, just open chest of all of these ideas that we can have fun with werewolves. So I think that's part of what attracts us to it.
I'm fascinated by the social psychology inherent in this idea, that going all the way back to the birth of man and culture, we are somewhat obsessed with what if we changed? What if we were something else? What if we become monsters? What does that do?
Well, the other thing that goes along with the werewolf in particular is a deeply tragic element. Like, there's no tragedy in Dracula, in the character of Dracula, rather. It's a much more modern thing to have your vampires be mopey and tragic and, I never wanted this. I never wanted to drink the blood of the innocent. Oh,
this is the skin of a monster.
If I may,
Stephanie Meyer.
If I may, there's a lot of projection and there's a lot of intrusive thoughts regarding how does a condition manifest itself psychologically. I think it's one thing to sort of take a condition and go and sort of do like a pushing out kind of a thing. It's like, okay, we have this condition, we have this monster. What does this do to the community? And and what does this do to the people around us? And therein lies the horror and the adventure. I think there's room in this world for a degree of psychological introspection of what would this do to someone's sense of self, and how does that relate to the ongoing living experience of people. So somebody who's like struggling with trying to keep this. I mean, damn it, and it informed the creation of the Hulk character in Marvel Comics. If I can go that dumb with it.
Well, I was saying you're absolutely right. The idea of a werewolf is literally the duality of man.
Right.
The wolf represents everything that we have locked away as human beings. It is the primal state. It is pure animal instinct.
Yeah, which this movie tries to get at, but in the most ham-fisted, lampshaded, hit you over the head with a frying pan way possible. More on that in a few minutes. Go ahead, Robert.
Well, there's a reason that, like, if you look at what is the first, because while werewolves appear in all kinds of stories, what's the first actual werewolf story? And the argument's been put forth, and I find it's mostly convincing. Stephen King references this, that it's actually Jekyll and Hyde. Like, that's
Makes
your
sense.
kind of first werewolf story.
Mm-hmm.
The werewolves appear in others, but what's the first story fundamentally about them? It's Jekyll and Hyde. And that's another one that does a lot of the informing of how we can kind of approach certain elements of werewolf stories. You kind of have two, basically. You have either the Lon Chaney Jr., and I don't mean this derisively, but the good man afflicted with this disease accidentally, having to deal with it, or the Jekyll and Hyde, I do this to myself, and some of me is deteriorating, some of me really likes it, and then you get like a deeper character study on that. That's kind of where you go with this for the most part, and there have been changes to that throughout time.
I want to quick throw this in there. I want to throw it into the mix here. So much of like scholarly Bible study deals with these are stories for managing behavior. There is not enough natural incentive for people to behave, and so we create myth and we create story, and in the case of the Judeo-Christian traditions, we create Judeo-Christian myths in order to get people to buy into behaving appropriately so the civilization can evolve and move forward. And I'm wondering how much of that also how much of that there's a parallel in these monster stories.
There's certainly some, but they also carry a lot more utility than necessarily just myth building. There's a line in, I think it's the second Pat Rothfuss book, so not Name of the Wind, but Wise Man's Fear, where one of the main characters is talking with somebody else, and the guy kind of makes a point, like, so somebody tells you in the woods that there's a monster out there, and he goes through the different geographic locations, because if you're in more of the south of this country, it's a bugbear. If you're in more of the northeast, it's I forget what it is, but there's like 4 different ones. And by and large, even though this is a fantasy story, these are not real creatures. And they're not real creatures. But the question asked is just, okay, so that creature's not real. Here's the real question. Do you go into the woods anyway? So whether or not there is a werewolf out there is, again, probably not. At this point, all indicators are no, werewolves don't exist.
But is there still a sense of danger out there? Is
there something out there you need to stay away from?
Right.
I was going to say, is it actually just an evil real estate firm that's designed the werewolf myth to keep away those meddling kids and their dog too?
It was one of the things I liked about M. Night Shyamalan's The Village. He didn't stick the landing, but that was what he was playing with. It was like, let us create enough palpable fear that we can control and protect this population so that it continues to exist. And I love the idea of...
Well, the other thing he plays with, and I bring it up because it is going to play into this, is that no matter how much control you try to institute from the top down or even kind of foster from the bottom up, you never get away from... You can never fully get away from evil in humanity. We have consciousness. We have the ability to choose between good and evil. Some people are inevitably going to choose evil.
Yeah.
And some people don't realize that they have become the evil. What was the line? They try they're so hard to protect their children that they become the thing that scars them.
Yeah, because we've got to have a bad riff on you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
That is a great place to stop this. What was an engaging conversation until right that very second. All right, Robert, let's get into the plot synopsis.
All right, so
And the
Wolfman.
faster you get through this, hang on, the faster you get through this, the less she interrupts, and the faster you get through this, the faster we get through this whole podcast. So
I'm aware.
Chop, chop, baby.
So we open in the medium past, would have been 80s or 90s, I think, if assuming that the movie is set in 2024/5. With a small child in the woods of Central Oregon living with his father. They are mostly off the grid. They have a generator. There's some kooky survivalist types out in Oregon and, Idaho, Montana, etc. And his dad is super strict. Not abusive, but strict. And for some reason, this is a line that I'll yell about it later. It's one of my gripes about this. I'll get to it.
Mm-hmm.
They go out deer hunting, and while hunting deer, they stumble across a werewolf. This is the kind of thing that has lived out in these woods for a long time. He overhears his dad talking in his CB radio with a neighbor about it.
Leigh Whannell's cameo.
Yeah. And then we flash forward, what'd they say, 30 years?
35, I think.
Yeah, something like that. To that same child, now all grown up, with a wife and kid of his own. And who's that actor, Mark, that we made fun of from The Outlaws as being like the worst male?
Oh, Adam Devine.
Yeah,
Hang on, let me warn Alexis, because Alexis doesn't listen to our other shows, so she might not know this.
I don't listen to all your other shows. I listen to some.
Okay. We hate Adam Devine, and if you say anything nice about him, we're going to yell at you.
Wasn't that the guy who played Sam I Am when we reviewed the Green Eggs and Ham animated series?
Then he's fine in that, but he sucks everywhere else.
Okay, fine.
There is a long-standing tradition of us separating voice acting from physical acting.
Yes.
There's a lot of guys who I can't stand as like on-screen actors who are good voice actors.
Like Jack Black, yeah.
Will Arnett is my go-to on that.
Yeah. Or I was going to say Jack Black's my go-to.
Yeah, that's very fair. Anyway, so a male character written in the style of Adam Devine. Got to tell you where I fell on this real quick. Is down in San Francisco, right? Or
it was that was definitely San Francisco.
Okay.
Doesn't matter. You're not getting an ounce of sunshine throughout this entire freaking movie.
When you get to Oregon, that's legit, but in San Francisco, not quite so much. Anyway, he has a kid now, and he has flashes where he gets a little bit stern and then apologizes profusely like a wuss. He and his wife are having a little bit of a rut because he's unemployed and she's the busy journalist woman who doesn't have time for all of his romance and feelings. And can you tell that Leigh Whannell finally got around to, hey, what if the roles were reversed?
Okay.
I thought it was more, okay, I'm sorry, may I?
Mm-hmm.
See, I thought it was more they were worried about how she was unable to be close to her daughter, because this is actually something I related to.
Here's the thing. That's why we can get into this when we get to the craft review, because it's so fucking blunt. She literally is like, I have a heart. It's like, it was like people who had never been who had never acted before, and they were just like thrown lines, and it's like there's no subtext. It's all super text. I don't know how to connect to my daughter. I have a problem managing my anger. There's a monster in me and I don't want to let it out. Like, Jesus Christ, they did everything but yell straight into the camera.
I was waiting for the fourth wall break. I really was.
The tension between the two of them, I didn't get the sense of she's a busy businesswoman who don't need no man and he's a stay-at-home mom. I think if you're talking about the scene in the kitchen, she's literally like having a phone call with her editor, and he's like, "Could you take it in another room?" And after 3 or 4 times of saying, "Could you take it in another room?" and she doesn't do it, he's like, "Any particular reason why you're not listening to me, asshole?" Which, if you've ever been married, that's a common thing. So I didn't get the sense of there was something deeper than, "Hey, could you not be a dick to me?" Keep going.
Well, again, there's a little bit more going on there, but again, I'm willing to tackle that at a later date. Mm-hmm. So he gets a letter that says the state of Oregon has officially declared his father dead, which they knew was coming, but because, again, all we can do is super text all of this. You can't actually rely on the actor to act and convey things with something other than dialogue. So they all get together, they rent a moving truck, they go drive out to the middle of nowhere, Oregon, looking for this house. They find his old neighbor, who was a kid around our protagonist's age.
Yeah,
He says-
I think he said he was the guy that his dad was talking to on the ham radio.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be his son.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he says, yeah, you're a little bit lost. I will happily direct you where you need to go, though. So he climbs into the van, and the wife being like, he's got a gun. You can't just let him in here. And the husband, who actually knows people who live in places like that, goes, sweetie, everyone has a gun out here.
And what's that line from Miss Congeniality? This is Texas. Everyone has a gun. My florist has a gun.
But as they're driving, they stumble across a wolfman, a werewolf in the middle of the road. They swerve to avoid it, get into a big car wreck. The wolf attacks them, kills the red shirt, and sorry, that's what he is, and scratches our protagonist. Was it Blake? I think.
Yeah, Blake, Charlotte, and the kid. Tell me, I
Ginger.
wasn't the only one who realized why the daughter's name was Ginger.
And Ginger snaps.
Yes, thank you.
Everything in this movie is related to previous Wolfman movies. Dirt heap.
You're not wrong, believe it or not. I'll get into that in a minute or two.
Oh, will you?
So
'Cause
they make a run for it for the house because they're very close to it. They get to the farmhouse. They lock themselves in. But the scratch from the werewolf has begun to infect Blake with lycanthropy. And we start getting the body horror. His senses heighten. And he starts going, Wolfman. They're also still being menaced by the other Wolfman who is stalking the house. And eventually they try to make a break for it because Blake's in bad shape. And they get to a truck that's outside. They're able to jumpstart it using a spare battery that was on hand and still good.
The benefits of finding a home used by a survivalist.
Indeed. If things ever do go sideways, they are the ones prepared. But they're attacked again by the werewolf and barely escape. And then Blake winds up distracting it, gets into a fight with it, is let back into the house, but he's again getting worse and is starting to menace his wife and is not too fond of his daughter anymore.
Can't
And then the
communicate.
other
Can't
werewolf-
understand them.
Yeah, one of the things I did actually really like about this iteration, but I'll get to it. Then the first werewolf attacks again. He's able to get into the house this time. Takes a bit, but they do overpower him, and Blake kills it by biting its throat out. Once again, references to all other previous werewolf stories. There's so many. But as he does so, he looks and sees a tattoo on the werewolf's arm that was the same that his father had, and this is his dad that he's just killed. And now he's slightly more stricken with guilt and knows what kind of a monster he'll turn into, so he wanders off into the woods. Sadly, not to live deliberately, but to complete his transformation. And then he chases down his wife and child to go to the same deer stand that was used in the opening sequence. But he's still enough of a man to go, I don't want to live like this. End me. And then she shoots him in the chest and he dies.
Well,
And the wife and daughter look out on the
she-
valley.
Hang on. She hesitates and he goes, blah, 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 and she goes, ah! And shoots him by accident.
And his wife and daughter look out on the valley and go, now that there are no more men in our lives, everything's better.
That would be correct. That would be the message of the movie. all
I
men are
joke.
dogs. All men are dogs. Do you get it? Do you get it? Speaking of do you get it? Alexis, I know you're chomping at the bit here. Arr, 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 arr. Yep. I've had it while I continue to watch hockey.
Oh, yeah, you just had me on here last week to talk about vampires, and you asked about my kinks there. So now you're going to ask about those with this one.
I never stopped being that.
I could make a joke about Romanians and the difference between bestiality and bestiality, but I won't.
I give you props for that, Robert. Thank you. Okay. So, couple things I do want to point out. First of all, like I was mentioning earlier, I do relate to the struggle with the mother with the daughter. Growing up, my mom worked. She was a radio DJ, and she worked the morning drive, so she had to be up and out of the house by 4:30 in the morning.
You know your parents are a lot cooler than you, right? Your dad's a working photographer. Your mom's a DJ. Like, can I hang out with your parents? They're
Yeah,
awesome.
sure. You know what? You know what? Get your ass up here in 2 weeks. They're hosting a Super Bowl party.
I certainly will. To Missouri.
Yeah.
I got it right.
You can go play in the snow.
Ugh, never mind.
Yeah, you want to deal with what's the current temperature out? 5 degrees?
Oh no, that's gonna make hearing that out loud makes my nose stuff up.
Alexis, you and me both.
Yeah, what is it where you are right now?
10-ish.
All right, Alexis, keep going.
Okay.
Utah finally got hit with the cold, so
yeah, no, there's an Arctic blast that brought everything down south. Okay, but so my mom was always out of the house. So dad was the one who got me up and made me breakfast and got me off to school. And when my mom got home, of course, she would go straight to bed. And she'd be sleeping until dinner time. So dad was then the one who'd go and pick me up from school. He was the one who cooked dinner. And I identified more with him and I bonded more with him. And even now, 40-year-old, and he and I still have more in common than I do with my mother. I love my mother to death, but I don't have as much in common with her as I do with my dad. So that scene where she's talking about how she has trouble relating to her daughter, that hit me because my mom went through that same thing. And I had to grow up watching her realize that she wasn't bonding with me the way she wanted to. And it was hard, I didn't realize it then. But now that I'm older, it's like, oh, yeah, it's like I feel bad that mom and I didn't bond like, she wanted to. A couple of things I will also mention. Praise be that we got full prosthetics and makeup for the werewolf and the transformation. There is little to no CGI in this entire thing. In fact, a good chunk of the transitions with the sensory manipulation are actually done via lighting on the set.
Let me tell you how that's the best thing in the movie, is when he goes into werewolf vision. That was my favorite stuff.
Specifically when he starts transitioning, or that scene where he basically gets the reverse fisheye and everything goes, I saw the TV glow.
That.
Okay. That was a cool shot. That was a very cool shot.
With their eyes glowing white and everything, and everything is sort of like a blue tint. Honestly, it was like the only thing in this movie I didn't hate.
I did a little reading. Apparently, a lot of what Whannell was inspired by with the transformations, he had a friend that sadly passed from ALS. And he talked a lot about watching this person go through a degenerative disease and being unable to do anything about it. And ALS is a horrible, horrible thing. Your body is essentially quitting on you. And no matter what, you can't stop it. And I thought this movie did a really good job kind of parlaying that same idea. Blake is going through this horrible transformation. He can't stop it. His wife can't stop it. All he can do is just, hitting my own damn light there, is accept the fact that, he is pretty much dying. And this movie really captured that in a way that I don't think werewolf films in the past have done.
The closest would probably be American Werewolf in London.
Mm-hmm.
Great movie.
Which has also still, I think, probably it's a toss-up between that and Howling for the best werewolf transformation sequence.
I can't speak to Howling, but the American Werewolf in London transformation scene is awesome.
Absolutely.
It's the best I've ever seen.
I remember showing that to my sister and was like, no CGI, no computers, just enjoy. It's amazing. That's probably actually one of my favorite werewolf movies. But yeah, like I mentioned, the transformation scenes, the going back and forth of their perspective, that he can no longer understand her, she can no longer understand him. I thought that was very clever. Again, that's not something we've really seen before. That was my biggest takeaway with this, was that it was a new way to look at werewolves. And I mentioned this also on the chat. I was like, thank God we finally get a return to werewolves being scary. I was sick to death of what we got with the Twilight movies, where it's like, oh, it's a werewolf, he's so fluffy, I want to go pet it. It's like, no, I should not want to go pet the fluffy with a werewolf. I'm supposed to be scared shitless. Yeah, some of the dialogue was pretty forced. I still have no idea how Charlotte figured out that was Grady that he killed as the original werewolf. Because I mean, I knew it was great. I mean, I don't know at what point, but I was just like, "Where's the tattoo?
At one point,
Show
I
the
was gonna say, at one
tattoo."
yeah, at one
Yeah.
point he lifts up the sleeve and sees the tattoo, and there's the connection for the audience. It's his dad.
But I was waiting for that. I was like, "It's Grady. It's Grady." I was literally
Mhm.
waiting through multiple attacks. It's like, show the
Oh,
arm,
yeah.
show the arm, show the tattoo. I knew it was him, but I couldn't figure out how Charlotte knew when she gives the lines like, "I think your grandfather was sick, and I think he gave that to your father." I was like, "How did you figure out that was your father-in-law?" You know,
Because-
your husband has never talked about his dad.
Because the audience knows, therefore the character has to know for that
Yeah.
point, and it's bad writing.
It is so bad.
Okay, fair enough. But so I will say this probably isn't going to make my top 10 for 2025, but I'm still glad I saw it. More positives than negatives. Like I said, the script, the dialogue. Okay, the dialogue really needed to be punched up, but the
Can I
horror
get-
scenes were good.
So, when it comes to the dialogue, allow me to express my utter contempt for a trend that's been growing. The pervasive use of therapy speak in place of dialogue. I hate it because nobody talks like that. Everyone talks like they're in a therapist
If you are a
session.
professional in the mental health field, you can incorporate. I do it on this podcast, but I am a professional in the mental health profession. Not so the layman doesn't talk the way when they use therapy speak in movies like this. Nobody else talks that way.
Yeah, I have come to very much loathe that as the default for every character going right now. It's so bad.
All right. I'm not going to take up too much time with this. I think I described it to my girlfriend as this was somewhere between meh and blah.
Bleh.
Bleh.
I was like,
Blah.
bleh or bleh.
Blah. Just meh, blah.
No, combining meh and blah, you get bleh.
Yeah, and that's wrong. Bleh means gross. Blah means boring.
This is a weird podcast.
You should have been on our Pet Cemetery review.
No, thank you. So I want to say two nice things about this movie before I rip it a new asshole. Yeah, all of these stuff where they change his point of view, his visage, where he's in like werewolf visage, where everything is tainted blue. It kind of has like a red border highlight, and their eyes are glowing white. That all looked really cool, and it was one of those where, a good use of the film medium, changing a character perspective and really playing with color. It was one of the things I used to like about the old Predator movies before they got way stupid. Was I liked seeing
the first two.
Yeah, I like seeing. By the way, you haven't lived until you've watched The Brutalist and then remembered he was in Predators. So
What, Adrian Brody?
yeah.
I will
He's
never
in The
knock
Pianist too.
I will never knock that the first two Predator movies are the best, but if you had to put a third on there, I would actually pick Predators.
So sure.
I gotta think about that.
Well, the one where
maybe.
autism is a superpower doesn't make the list, and
That's The Predator, and no, that's one of the worst things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Anyway,
tell me about it. No, I'm talking about the one with Danny Trejo and
No,
Brody and Topher Grace. I say
that
that's
is
the third best.
up until the end with the stuff with Topher Grace. It was a perfectly acceptable movie, and I brought it up because I wanted to talk about the change in character perspective, which I really liked in Predator. I liked the way that it was done. I like the way this one was done too. It was it was a good use of the film medium and color. The other thing that I really liked, God, I lost my train of thought. It'll come back to me, I'm sure. So yeah, there's a lot of forced character stuff that I didn't like, and a lot of like forced dialogue. I don't like the fact the movie assumes your audience is a complete moron. And that's the way this movie is written. It's written from the perspective of, well, what we've learned from our focus groups and from our our trends in theatrical exhibition is that people don't want to think about what it is they're watching. People are dumb, They don't want to be challenged in any way. So if you want to talk about relationships and you want to talk about fatherhood and you want to talk about sort of the existential crisis men go through in controlling their worst behaviors and trying to be, and the civilizing process of marriage and fatherhood, you have to scream it at the audience or they're not going to get it, which this movie does. And it made me want to bite the seat in front of me. Speaking of animal behaviors, I was just like, come on, man. This assumes I'm a complete idiot. And it's like, I'm not interested in this movie. So there was that. Julia Garner is doing her level best. She's an excellent actress. She was great on Ozark. And for those of you who don't know who she is, she's the girl on your TikTok feed screaming, if you're gonna stop me, you're gonna have to fucking kill me. That's her.
We also gave her high praise in Apartment 7A. She was quite good in that.
Nobody saw that. But everyone has TikTok once again. So, and they all
for now
this week, and they've all heard that meme. That's her. She's excellent, and I think she's doing her level best with the material that she's given. They gave her the arc of I don't know how to connect with my daughter, and this movie is about forcing her to connect with her daughter. Through the act of saving her from wild, angry, hairy, snarling, drooling men. So anyway, this movie, subtle as a donkey kick to the face. If it comes to me later, the runtime, that was the second thing. Now I remember. I want to give this movie praise for being lean. This is Vince McMahon's lunch. He ate lean chicken. And there's no fat on this thing at all.
I was waiting for you to dovetail that into either legitimately what he ate or you making a very dirty joke.
No, I promised I promised you I would behave. So no.
You can make horrible jokes about Vince McMahon, and I'll go along with that.
Get out here, you rapist. So anyway. So for those that don't know, Vince McMahon historically, famously, would always eat like lean grilled chicken for lunch. And that is this movie to a plum. It is lean grilled chicken. It is 143 minutes. And it uses every bit of its runtime efficiently, and that is a good thing I will say about this movie. I was not bored because the movie drags or meanders or anything like that. I was bored because I was disinterested in the movie, and it did nothing to keep my interest. Sorry, I've seen monsters chase people literally between two different fucking structures. Because that's the whole goddamn movie, is them. They're in the house and they run to the garden and they run back to the house and they run back and finally it's all over. Super. So no, I was not interested in this. But the gods be praised. They defied our Lord and Savior Martin Scorsese and they made a short movie for theatrical exhibition, not 3.5 hours. By the way, The Brutalist is awesome.
And you can tell me that, and I'm not sure if I believe you.
Hey, I'm just still rejoicing now where it's got a freaking intermission.
It does, about 10 to 15 minutes. I got up and peed during it. It was glorious. Anyway, but that's like really the only good things I can say about it is the use of color in certain scenes and the efficient runtime and use of the medium. It gets you where you need to be as fast as you need to get there, and we are off and running, and then we are dealing with the monster, and all that stuff moves fairly quickly. If I have to give it some other praise, yeah, sure, the monster makeup looks good. I don't know. I'm kind of halfway between what Alexis was saying and where this movie is. I wish he looked more like a dog. I wish he looked more werewolfy. This seems like he fell into, he had an accident in Acme Chemicals, and this is what's left of him. Not so much Dogman. The dad looked a little bit like Dogman, and him kind of doing what my son's crawl when he refused to walk, even though he could, and he would, he was like, I get along faster if I do it this way, like when
okay,
he was doing.
Mark, what's your favorite werewolf design then? Just so I can know where you lie. Well, what is the movie that you saw the werewolf and you're like, that's what werewolves look like?
I mean, I like Teen Wolf. My problem is I haven't watched enough werewolves as of late. I don't know if I was going to ask you guys before. Have you seen Werewolves that came out late last year starring Frank Grillo? because the poster, I think, does a good job of what I think werewolf should look like, where they look more like actual dogs, but they're still menacing, and it's kind of like I would say almost like a cross between like a dog and a bear, that kind of a thing. In any case, just so I can pass over to Robert. Yeah, the story in this, there's barely one there. Yeah, that. The dialogue is
Poor.
poor and blunt and uninteresting. The actors are another thing I can praise is the little girl. I think she does an outstanding job with the stuff that she's given. It's hard for kids to act with their face because they're not good actors. She pulled it off. Julia Garner, I think, is trying, but if there's any character I truly believed in this movie that was in a movie that I was not aware they were in a movie. I actually believe that character was who they say they were, is the girl. She's actually one of the only things that really kept me invested in the movie. Her reactions to things, her behavior with the dad, her behavior in the house, and everything. All of that tracked for me. I liked her. I think she did a good performance. So, yeah, overall, on my 3-point scale, it's a 2, but it's like a low 2. It's not the worst movie I've seen this year. We're like only 3 or 4 weeks into the year, but I guarantee this is not going to make my bottom 5. However, this is nowhere near the best. If this is the best movie I see this year, we're canceling this podcast. This podcast is doomed. This is dead in 2026. So I will guarantee you it'll be better than this going to the end of the year.
I was going to say, here's another question for you guys. I joked earlier about the Dark Universe falling apart and Universal just giving the rights to Leigh Whannell and saying, have fun, because he actually turned a profit with The Invisible Man. What classic Universal monster would you want to see him do next?
One where he doesn't get to shoehorn domestic abuse into it.
Creature from the Black Lagoon. Creature from the Black Lagoon, only because we haven't seen that in a while, and I put a high value on novelty, but also I think there's a lot of, if you handle it right, if you don't let the activists write your movie, you can actually do a parable about climate change and global warming and environmentalism in your Creature in the Black Lagoon movie and actually have it be effective.
Okay, can I ask you something about that real quick?
Sure.
Have you seen the original Creature from the Black Lagoon?
I have not.
Okay. That explains why you would have that takeaway from it. Okay.
I'm actually with you, Mark, because I mentioned earlier that I think what Leigh Whannell's talent is, it's creating scares that leave more to the viewer's imagination.
Oh, hang on. That's the thing I hated most about this. It was way too dependent on jump scares, and the jump scares suck. Sorry, there's a bit in this movie. You were trying to make a point. I apologize for interrupting you, but you reminded me of something I hated. There's a bit in this movie where they do the bit where you're looking in the window and the window is foggy. The window clears up and there's a monster.
Oh, yeah, when they're in the truck.
And I'm sorry, is the monster like that prescient? Does the monster know it's being scary? Is that what we're doing here? Like, that's a problem, is there's so much lazy writing in this. It drove me up the wall. All right, finish your point and then Robert, go.
I was just saying that is Leigh Whannell's talent, and I think Creature from the Black Lagoon could really use that talent, or use that kind of a scare that we don't actually see a lot of what the creature is doing, but we see more of the reactions to it. Sure. Yeah, and Jaws, I think that would be really good.
Use the Jaws model. It works just fine.
Right, yeah, but Whannell sure as hell ain't Spielberg.
Fair.
To answer the question, like, again, give me which classic monster would I like to see him sort of tackle? Again, I'm not kidding when I say, look, using the Invisible Man's framework to tell a story about a woman escaping an abusive relationship actually worked. We were fairly complimentary of that.
Yeah, we were.
Apart from the ending, which still felt horribly tacked on. But see our review of The Invisible Man for details on that. When you're big, like, hey, so what's my Wolfman movie going to be about? Well, it'll be about a man struggling with his relationship with his family, and there'll be a domestic abuse sort of undertone to it, and or domestic violence. the main character is not abusive to his family. And be very clear
can
about
we
that.
just say very clearly, a man who expresses his anger, which is a natural emotion, it is part of the human experience, is not domestic violence. Please develop thicker skin, people. My God.
Yeah, and but that's where we are. We're like, no, my dad yelled.
And not every man that yells at you is going to turn into Mike Tyson and beat you across the room.
Okay, hang on. You guys would appreciate this little message from Zachary Strobel. He wrote, "The only wolf man I'm interested in seeing."
All right, can you keep going, Robert?
But my point is, whatever Leigh Whannell does next, can we get beyond your faux daddy issues, please?
Or lack of a daddy issue?
Like, again, it worked for The Invisible Man. It actually worked really well.
Yeah.
It doesn't work here, where the Curse of Lycanthropy is a loose analog for you turning into a monster to your kids because your dad was a strict man. Yeah. But to all available but look, if you want the dad to be a monster in this movie, you should have made him a monster. Instead, he's a fairly reasonable, military parent. But he's not he never yells at the kid for nothing. He never hits him. He's never ridiculous.
Oh, by the way, when he does yell at her, immediately apologizes and goes, I probably shouldn't have yelled at you. All right, Alexis, are you playing with your mic?
No.
I don't know if that's
not
me.
Yeah, I've been hearing it too, but that's not me.
Maybe it's me. Sorry.
So but just move beyond domestic circumstances for the underlying messaging and tone of your movies, please. It worked for one. It doesn't work here. Consider that welcome worn out. Throw it away.
Your thoughts about the actual movie, sir?
Well, there's that.
Yes.
Where this is deeply uninteresting on that level, because it refuses to commit to making anyone actually a monster until they're infected. So
it does a very modern thing of assuming. It assumes that we all hate natural male behaviors.
Yeah.
And that when we see it, we will instantly recognize this and be with the movie. And it's like, did you not pay attention to anything in the last 3 months? Just going to go through
or the last 3 years.
Yeah. Keep going.
Terrible. So there's that. As far as my positives, I'm with you guys. I liked the play of, perspective, where we actually see that his perspective is not the same as his wife's, and the loss of ability to effectively communicate. They were able to lean a little bit into the tragedy of the Wolfman character, and that's a plus, because frequently that gets lost, and it was, again, at least paid service here. If not, the degree to which they're successful is iffy, but they were aware of it and tried. There's a lot of referential material in this movie too. There's a difference between homage and being a little bit too lost in your references. And we have a kid named Ginger. And your makeup, the creature design for your werewolf is a little bit halfway between the original Wolfman and American Werewolf in London. And that's a really awkward place to have landed for your creature design. But, of course, we get the spider crawling on the wall sequence.
That was really good, actually. I figured it was a squirrel, or so I figured it was going to go up and see a squirrel like chewing on a nut, but the fact it was a spider, I was like, whoa, that actually caught me off guard.
Of course, we get the Saw reference, which I had to roll my eyes at that one.
In case you were wondering, keeping score, it did not make me squeamish. I didn't care.
No, there's nothing here enough to be that squeamish. I appreciate the practical makeup on the creatures, and bless the actors for sitting for however long it took to get that stuff applied, because good grief.
Yeah, there's an interview with the guy who played Blake talking about, sitting there for hours, and it's like, and people have to remember all that on me, and then I gotta go act.
Yeah. You wake up like 3 hours earlier to sit in that chair and get that crap put on you. It's a lot. And then it takes about that long to get it off when you're done shooting. It's a whole thing. But I appreciate the commitment to the practical effects instead of leaning on CGI. It makes everything look much more real. It gives you a lot more to play with. The runtime, I appreciate the runtime being again appropriately lean. I just wish there was stuff in the middle of this movie that was interesting. I'd be remiss if I didn't throw in this comment for Jason, who really hated how dark the movie was, because the whole thing takes place over the course of one night. Like, this is one day's worth of activity. And if you're like Jason, I imagine this was difficult to see and make out things. And I didn't have that problem, but others did. So I think it's fair to bring it up. There were a few decent scares. Again, there's nothing truly memorable, and there's one or two that are cheap jump scares. But there's a few others that I kept waiting for the jump scare and it didn't happen. I was like, you know what? I applaud the restraint. Good for you. So there was some of that, but ultimately, again, bad dialogue, characters you don't really care about. A couple of okay scares, but your messaging and your what you're actually trying to say is so ham-fisted and uninteresting that it kills your ability to actually invest in the characters or anything that's going on. So this is a miss. It's not terrible. I hope this is the worst movie I see all year. Let me put it like that. Because if this is the worst thing I see,
optimistic.
I would like this to be the worst thing I see all year. That's the best way I can phrase a movie like this. Because it's not good. But I'm okay watching a movie like this in general. I will never rewatch this, but if you sit me down and if I go to an average movie not quite knowing what to expect and I get something of this quality, I'm not thrilled, but I'm not like threatening to burn the place down. I'm not getting on here and ranting and raving and wanting to, commit various war crimes.
Yeah, I would say this is a average movie, but on the low end of average.
It's a solid 5.2
on a 10-point scale. All right, with that
clearly
said,
not on the Dave Meltzer 5-star system. This is 5.2.
I stand by what I said. I think the scares are great. The dialogue is what brought it down. If Whannell had brought in a script doctor, I think it could have made this movie a lot better.
There's a much better story to be had out of this that he was not able to find.
Yeah, I would agree with that. All right, folks, here we go. Here comes the money.
We're in the money. We're in the money.
All right, I am behind a step. So, Robert, I chickened out. So, if Toronto had won tonight, and all 5 of my teams that I picked had won, I'd have won like $313. They're currently up 4-3 against Tampa, but I don't trust my luck, so I cashed out at $256.
That's not a bad call.
I didn't think so, to be honest with you. I think, and especially given my luck, that was probably the safest. That was probably the safest thing I could have done. All right, so now that we are all aware of my gambling hobby,
problems,
I would like to call it a hobby.
Don't like you're drinking?
Touchy.
Oh, for God's sake!
Yeah, I just actually listened to a really good podcast about that. I can never remember the name of it. Plain English. There it is. The Plain English podcast did a whole thing about whether or not moderate drinking is good for you, which has been conventional wisdom. Which is like sometimes you're so hard to talk to. Which has been conventional wisdom for many, many years, which is why they looked into it. As it turns out that a lot of the studies that made it conventional wisdom were like misread, misunderstood. There's really a lot of really interesting things about it. But yes, the bottom line was that moderate drinking isn't good for you, but it's not horrible for you either.
Hey.
It is sort of it is within the window of acceptable risk.
Here's just a thought. The consumption of alcohol is one of those things that at this point in time and for the last 100 years or so, we're better off without.
Listening
200
to you
years,
two go
actually.
on is making me want to go consume alcohol. Can we get to the money?
Well, as long as you do a moderate amount, it's a minimal risk. All right.
Those running across a busy street doesn't mean you should do it.
I wish you would. Anyway,
Don't tempt me.
on the weekend of January 17th. Oh, I'm doing this wrong. On a budget, see, you fucked me all up, jerk. On a budget of $25 million, this thing has made $16.8 million. I mean, if it gets to $50 million, hooray, hoorah, but and it's hard to say if it will or not. Considering this, what we're going to talk about in a minute is that this debuted third. The only thing it's got going in its favor is that we're still in the early stages of the year. And nothing, people. There's nothing that's coming out that people may be interested in for the next little bit, including Captain America: Brave New World. More on that in a moment. As of January 20th, 2025, The Wolfman has grossed $12 million in the U.S. and Canada, and $4.8 million in other territories for a worldwide total of $16.8 million. In the U.S. and Canada, Wolfman was released alongside One of Them Days, which I was told was quite funny if you like that sort of humor. It was projected to gross $15 to $21 million from 3,300 theaters in its opening 4-day weekend, MLK weekend. Variety said, Variety, making up any excuse they can, said the wildfires in Los Angeles were not expected to affect the film's box office performance, and that, yes, there is a world outside of Los Angeles. And that the audience
Not for
reception
Variety.
The film made $4.5 million on its first day, including $1.4 million from Thursday night previews. It went on to debut $10.2 million in its opening weekend, coming below projections and finishing third at the box office behind One of Them Days. We should have reviewed that. And Holdover.
Oh,
Mufasa.
yes, Mark. Please tell me how that would have been a good idea.
Oh, that would have been so good. And Mufasa, the Lion King, in its fifth weekend. Deadline Hollywood noted that the opening was less than the $17.9 million opening for Wolf in 1994, adjusted for inflation. IMAX and premium large format screens accounted for 41% of its opening box office, and exit polling indicated that 50% of the attendees who saw the film went because of the genre. All right, the number one movie of the weekend was Mufasa, which took its number one spot back.
I can't
last
begin
week.
to express how little I think of the people still watching that piece of shit.
Likewise.
5 weeks out, people. 5 weeks out. It's still the number one movie of the weekend.
It's too bad Wolfman actually landed when it did, because you know what? The full moon last week, January's full moon was called the Wolf Moon.
It's
Like,
huge and close.
It's like, God, if that full moon had only just been like 3 days later, then I think Wolfman could have had some real, Universal, I think, would have had some real fun with the marketing.
You could have.
One of Them Days debuted at number 2 from Sony. Wolfman, as we mentioned, number 3.
Someone other than Tyler Perry can make black comedy. By which I mean comedy aimed at black people, not dark comedy.
Sonic the... We all knew what you meant.
You have yelled at me so much about trying to get people to come along with my train of thought that when I actually do it, now you're trying to shame me for it.
He just wants an excuse to yell at you.
I don't need an excuse.
I'm starting to think that.
Once again, I don't need an excuse.
Also true.
Sonic the Hedgehog 3 fell from 3 to 4. Den of Thieves, which was last week's number one movie, fell all the way to 5. I had no idea the Den of Thieves movie for Lionsgate were as popular as they were, but apparently they've got an audience. Moana, which we will talk about.
It's briefly in defense of Den of Thieves.
Sure.
It's been a minute since we've had the gritty crime action thriller. Because those are very gritty, grimy crime movies. And we haven't had a lot of those recently, so...
Okay. I'm all for what people want to see being in theaters. Moana, speaking of which we will talk about in the worldwide gross in just a moment, fell from 5 to 6. Nosferatu 4 to 7. A Complete Unknown 6 to 8. Wicked 7 to 9. Baby Girl 10 to 8. The Brutalist. All right. Let me do this now. We may end up talking about The Brutalist in a week or so. We may not. We will probably most definitely be talking about it in a few weeks when we do our Oscar survey for Best Pictures. I saw The
I will-
Brutalist.
For the record, the reason this is in doubt, so everyone knows, I looked this up because I know it's on the upcoming triple feature, and the nearest showing for me is about an hour's drive. I am not going to drive, watch a 4-hour movie, and then drive an hour back home. That is committing an entire day to this enterprise.
It's not our fault you live in the middle of nowhere.
I'm just explaining. That's all I'm
Okay.
doing.
That is a reasonable explanation. I, however, drove about 40 minutes from my house to the Veterans movie theater to go see this on the Sunday. Yeah, I took my girlfriend for breakfast and then took her home, threw her out of the car, and said, "It's later, toots." And I drove all the way to the Veterans across Tampa to go sit in this movie, and it's the best thing I've seen. I wish I had seen it before our top 10 show. It would have been my number one. It would have surpassed The Wild Robot for me. It's that good. It's
Say nearest theater for me is 32 minutes. I'm hoping this week if I can get everything done, because Lord knows everything has fallen on me at once, then I can find a chance to go catch a matinee.
all
Yeah,
right, so
I
won't
would
get
literally have to drive to Salt Lake City to find this.
So we may end up talking about this more than once. So I will just say, I absolutely love The Brutalist. It did not feel its runtime, even with the intermission. Like I was glad for the intermission, but the intermission kind of comes and you're just like, oh, like oh my god, that part of the story. Not, oh thank God I have to pee. My legs are dead. I'm tired. I've slept through most of this. None of that. Adrian Brody is fucking phenomenal. Guy Pearce, this is like the best thing I've seen him in a long time. Everybody in this is so good. I mean, I oftentimes with movies like this, there's a conversation to be had about self-indulgence, but I think this movie earns its length. I think it earns all of the awards that it's being nominated for or winning. It's excellent. I loved every minute of this movie. We complained so much. It's so funny. I was making a joke to Jesse. Like, you listen to all the songs we've done for sessions, and like half of them are just us complaining about the movie industry as if we don't like movies. And The Brutalist was a reminder that I do like movies. I just like movies that are of a high quality. I mean, granted, I like
Not
bullshit.
bad.
I like bullshit too. Don't get me wrong.
You like a lot of bullshit.
Well, I told Jesse, I can't remember if it was it was on the West Wing podcast where I said I described myself as kind of like a raccoon who finds a used sex doll and goes, "Hey, can we do something with this?"
Yeah, that's accurate.
Yeah.
So, but I do enjoy well-made film. Like, there is something in between trash and complete like lovable trash and high art. And I enjoy it when I see high art that I like, I want to call it out. So I don't expect the hoi polloi of anyone listening to this podcast to run to their nearest theater to go see The Brutalist. But when it is available to watch at home, and you can watch it in the comfort of your own home and pee at will, be on the floor if you like. By all means, watch The Brutalist. Challenge yourself a little bit. You'll be a better person for it. I promise you. All right. With that said, back to the money. The Last Showgirl, which we talked about last week, dropped from 10 to 12. Sing Sing is back in theaters. That's on the short list for nomination for Best Picture. I'm Still Here. Debuted at number 26. Autumn and the Black Jaguar in 28. Grand Theft Hamlet debuted at 30. Dig XX debuted at 37, and Both Eyes Open as opposed to Eyes Wide Shut debuted at number 40, and that was the weekend that was. I want to talk about 2004 before we talk about 2005 because there's stuff to talk about. And that stuff to talk about is Moana has finally...
Well, one of those was the year I graduated high school.
2024. Moana 2, more importantly, has now made over $1 billion. It is the third highest earning
good for
movie
that
of the
one.
year. Look at Disney taking the first 3 spots here.
Well, congrats. It's not like they had anywhere to go but up.
I don't give them any credit for Deadpool and Wolverine. I give them almost none for that. But Inside Out 2 and Moana, legitimately, yes.
So movies knocked out of the top 10 in just the last few weeks. Beetlejuice, Gladiator, Gladiator 2 didn't get knocked out. It actually made it to number 11. Venom is currently sitting in the number 10 spot, and then the rest of it. And Mufasa bumped everybody down. It's currently in the number 7 spot at 591. And then $200,000 later, $200 million later, rather, is Wicked at number 6. And Wicked got all the way to number 6, people. It got into the 700 millions. Didn't quite do $1 billion, but I think it did somewhere what some Universal executives would have liked it to do. So, no crying there. Back to 2025. Den of Thieves, Pantera is the number 1 movie in the world right now at 32 million. The Wizard of Emerald City sounds like a porn.
I was gonna say that sounds like one of those generic versions of Wicked in the that they put at the front of the cashier or the grocery checkout in hopes that your grandparents will mistakenly think it's.
Sure, that was an episode of Oz.
This feels like a mockbuster. Wolfman is currently the number 3 worldwide, 3 in the world at 17 million. One of Them Days is 14 million. How to Make a Killing 4, Game Changer 2, something in Spanish 2, something in Polish 8.
I'll save you the embarrassment of asking you to pronounce a few of these.
Thanks, pal. Something in English that I still don't want to pronounce is at 1 million, and number 10 is the Solitary Gourmet at 1.5 million. So that's the weekend.
Here we go. Wizard of Emerald City. It's a Russian knockoff of the Wizard of Oz.
Awesome. This weekend coming up is the 24th. But it's also Flight Risk, which so I wanted to go see. I never get anything I want. I wanted to go see Screenboat because I thought it'd be fun. But my son and I am a good father. My son wants to go see Flight Risk, so we're going to go see Flight Risk from Lionsgate, which is directed by Mel Gibson and stars Robert Winfree's favorite actor, Mark Wahlberg.
No, okay.
But if you
one of those things is a lie, and it's not who directed it.
I still can't believe they got David Howard Thornton to play. Yeah, I stand by what I wrote in the chat. I said, "Did you see who's playing the killer mouse in Screenboat?" I need to rethink my life and what has led me to saying those words in that order.
If you're looking for something for adults, Steven Soderbergh's directing a movie called Presence from Neon Studios. Support your local indie folks. If you're looking for something for dopes, Star Trek Section 31 will be on Paramount Plus. You can sit at home in your underwear and pee on the floor.
That's not something for dopes. That's something for the brain damaged.
Whatever. We got a couple more independent movies here. We got
Kurtzman
Inheritance
can
from
kiss
IFC.
my ass with everything he's done to Star Trek.
For all of you who are conservative and hate liberals and everything they stand for, and you still like to go to the movies, Brave the Dark from Angel Studios will be out. Something called Into the Deep, which doesn't have a hyperlink, and then the aforementioned Screamboat. So,
can I ask you a serious question, Mark?
Sure.
Why did you want to see Screamboat?
Looked fun. I saw Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey when that was in the theater too.
I thought Jason basically blackmailed you into that one.
I make my own decisions. No one forces me to do shit. So
must be nice.
Okay. Moving on. So that's
as a minor note, like how creatively bankrupt is Hollywood that, hey, look, Steamboat Willie came into the public domain. Hey, Popeye the Sailor's in the public domain. What do we do with them? We'll turn them into Jason knockoffs, you lazy.
In defense of my decision to see Screamboat, at the time, a lot of this other stuff hadn't been announced or come out yet. So, like, now we have to deal with, like, the Popeye thing, too. And it's like, well, no, now I'm over it. I don't want to see any more of these.
But it's in the Pooh-verse, Mark, so we can... And Peter Pan's going to turn into a pedophile.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw the thing on that, too. And I'm like, no, thank you. Like, hard pass. The Screamboat thing seemed legitimately entertaining. The rest of this seems, like, less than garbage.
We're building to the Pooh-verse Avengers assembling.
I hate everything about what you just said. Everything. Every last bit of it.
And yet one of us has financially supported these endeavors.
You're so much better than me. What would I do without you? Anyway.
You wouldn't have this podcast and you'd probably be happier.
The following week. So anyway, I was trying to ask you, what do you think will be the number one movie? It won't be. I mean, Wolfman's currently not the number one movie. Mufasa is.
Yeah, Flight Risk might sneak up there, but
I haven't seen. Here's the thing. Like, I think we saw one trailer for Flight Risk, and that sold my son. I barely remember it, and I don't remember seeing another one. So I'm curious, like if we who pay attention to this sort of thing aren't seeing a lot of media for Flight Risk, who the hell else is seeing it? I've seen the poster for Presents though everywhere. But again, Neon Studios.
I haven't seen anything about Presents.
I've seen a few things. They kind of sat on their hands for a long time with the marketing. Or they just didn't have any faith in it. Take your pick.
Probably the latter.
The last weekend of January has Dogman, which I assume attracts somewhat of a family audience. Companion, which I'm very high on. We added it to the schedule.
Having now seen the trailer, I'm with you on that one. I'm very curious.
Yeah, now that they released the second trailer. First trailer revealed nothing. Now that the second trailer is like, okay, this is getting interesting.
Yeah, I'm really interested in Companion. I'm going to go see that one by myself because I think I looked at the parent guide and went, yeesh.
Well, I was not nearly as high on Barbarian as others were, but
I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard it's like the bee's knees.
It's really good.
Again, I didn't care for it as much as other people did. It's fine, but then it takes a twist to set up the final act and did not land.
So I think Companion will end up being the #1 movie of the weekend.
Decent. That or Dogman.
Yeah.
Sort of depends on how many 8-year-olds make enough
And by
noise.
that point, Wolfman will be knocked so far out of contention it's not worth talking about anymore.
Yeah.
Then we get to February 7th, and I'm only gonna do a few more of these, and we're done. We've got really it's a 2-horse race between Love Hurts and Heart Eyes, and Love Hurts has a lot more reach than Heart Eyes. Well, it's being put out by Universal as opposed to Heart Eyes, which is being put out by Screen Gems. So Love Hurts is gonna beat the living shit out of Heart Eyes. But I think people, looking for a horror movie, let's put it this way: whatever the reach is, it somehow found my daughter because she was like, "When are we seeing Heart Eyes?" I might have to now do a double feature of Love Hurts and Heart Eyes, and wonder why I ever started this endeavor with my children. So you know why? I know why. But yeah, apparently Heart Eyes is got somewhat of a marketing reach. And then, my loves, is Valentine's Day. And we have Captain America: Brave New World, which it may be the #1 movie of its weekend because it's got no other competition. And I don't want to mark. The marketing is everywhere. But did you hear the Critical Drinker put out a video? This will be the last thing I say on this, and we'll go into the next thing. The Critical Drinker put out a video, his only 88,000th video on the subject. But he said one thing that was worth noting. With the amount of reshoots and re-edits and production costs that have skyrocketed, this thing needs to make $1 billion just to break even. Yeah. I don't understand why they didn't write this off. And I want to dedicate the next 2 to 5 minutes talking about this, and only 2 to 5 minutes, because this isn't like she's not here for me to beat on her, but this isn't an Alexis David Zaslav, why did you do this to me thing. This is a business decision, and it would have been a sound one. If their whole thing is if we write down and cancel Captain America because this is costing way too much money, we still have to deal with the plot points that are going to come out of it that lead to other stuff. Good. Find another way to do it. Find a cheaper way to do it. Take the loss. This thing, at some point, you have to look at your books and go, this isn't an endeavor worth doing. When you're sitting with, if I'm an executive, if I'm a producer on this movie, and I've got my accountants coming to me going, boss, this one got away from us. It's going to cost $1 billion just to make even. We had shot the movie entirely 3 different times, and 3 weeks ago we went back for more reshoots. Right.
I'm sorry. I'm assuming you guys were talking about Captain America again.
Yeah.
Yep. If you come into my office and you're like, it's Indiana Jones 5 all over again, my first thing is to go into Bob Iger's office, kick open the door, and go, "You have to stop this. You have the power." Like, this is irresponsible. This isn't about like the quality of the movie. I'm sure it'll be the same old Marvel slush.
It'll suck. It's gonna
That'll-
suck.
It's gonna.
There's
please-
no way you could Frankenstein together something watchable out of that.
Robert. There are people that are going to enjoy the movie just fine.
I didn't say there weren't people who were going to enjoy it. I said it's not going to be good.
No, of course it's not going to be good. It's garbage. But there are people who like garbage and don't know it's garbage. The world.
And I am under no obligation to indulge their delusions.
Anywho, my point being, this isn't what I'm ranting about. My ranting about is the fiscal irresponsibility. I hate to be that guy, but you have stockholders. This thing is.
You used
this is
to
the
at
kind
any
of-
rate.
This is the. They still do. This is the kind of thing that
Allegedly.
stockholders who like they don't care about Marvel or Falcon or anything else that from a cultural standpoint has anything to do with this fucking movie. They hear. Are you telling me you will let a movie go to theatrical exhibition that has to get $1 billion to break even in a market that won't support that? Are you out of your fucking minds? Like, I'm reminded of the one character from The Big Short going, give me my fucking money back. Give me my fucking money back. This is so bad, Robert.
Yeah, it's terrible. The Marvel studio has been a mess for a while. They coasted by on goodwill for a long time, ran out of it, realized they had nothing creatively, fell flat on their face for 2 years straight, canceled last year, desperately trying to reshoot the Thunderbolts and this piece of crap again and again and again and again. And just can't admit that. And then, like, okay, we're out of ideas. Here's the Russo brothers. Here's Robert Downey Jr. Please come back to us.
And that's the thing. Some of this may work in the long run, but as they said in The Wire, you can't turn an oil tanker around just like that. It takes time. Like I'm all for believing and having hope, and I don't really want to truck with a debate over an existential question of people finding the goodwill and coming back with enough time. The fact that they're trying to create an instant comeback, that's impossible. That's never going to happen. And then your first thing out of the gate is something that has to do, and you have set up Captain America 4 to fail monumentally, and there's no getting around that. And you could have all of these periodicals, Variety, The Hollywood Reporter, trying to spin this as best they can, but you can't get away from reality. Believe me, they would have tried with Indiana Jones, and they couldn't do it then. They're certainly not going to be able to do it now. And I don't understand how smart, responsible business people, not the sycophants at Marvel, the man children that work there. I mean the business people. I don't know how you let this happen. It's just that to me is the worst part of this is how I don't want to keep repeating myself, but how they had to have known before the critical drinker started talking about it that this thing was going to be a monumental financial disaster.
There's a lot of people, especially a lot of the inside baseball people for the Hollywood side of things, who have been ringing the alarm bell about this movie, about this year. Because it's supposed to be last year, remember? And then they went, oh, the strike. Yay, we have an excuse to spend more money and try and salvage this. But they've been sounding the alarm bell about this for a long time. And nothing's been done about it. It's just going to be what it is. Desaturated. Yeah. That clip of Falcon fighting the Red Hulk in the cherry field, and with the cherry blossoms going on in Washington, D.C., you have allegedly Captain America, the Red Hulk, and pink cherry blossoms, and for some godforsaken reason, you still refuse to use saturated color.
Can I tell you the
best
thing about that clip is the cherry blossoms. They look pretty.
Sure.
All right. Everyone ready to move on? Alexis, you ready to move on?
Oh, I was just playing a puzzle game while I was waiting for you two.
I know what you were doing. That's why I wanted to make sure I had your attention, sweetie. So here we go with the critical review.
Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No!
No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Yo, man, we ain't lying. Look at it.
That's about
Look
right.
at it.
Not terrible, but not great.
52% rotten on the critical score, on the tomato meter, and a 58% fan score. When the fans don't like it, that's where you really have problems. So all audiences, it's 55. Verified audience is 58, like a negligible difference there. All critics, it's 52. Top critics, it's 49. Again, a negligible difference. Anyway,
that's about right.
this is a miss for Blumhouse and Universal. My question is, can you miss this bad and still make money? That's really the question here.
Well, this thing was appropriately budgeted. I mean, it's not like they spent they did not. Dude, you couldn't finance one CGI shot in Falcon and the Red Hulk for what they spent on this movie.
Yeah.
What was that thing they did last year that like everything that A24 released combined had a budget equal to Red 1?
That's right. Director Leigh Whannell's attempt at bringing a fresh psychological dimension to the Wolfman comes at the expense of proper scares. Although fans of body horror will still find this some tasty morsels to chew on.
It's going to be mostly your own arm. Ow, 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 ow.
That's funny. Go see the substance if you want body horror. Don't settle for this pig in a blanket. Good God.
I stand by what I said. I thought the scares were it's like Whannell knew how to write a scary Wolfman story and the transformation of the Wolfman. He just didn't know how to do the human story around it.
Probably true.
Because I'm sorry, I'm not going to stop saying about how great those scares were in the transformation scenes. I still stand by were really good.
Luke Buckmaster, sounds like a porno name, flicks of Australia, New Zealand, and in the UK. This is the second time Whannell has taken potentially schlocky material and sucked all the fun out, creating an air of terrible, choking heaviness. Sir.
Wait, why does that have a red? That should. I'm confused.
I'll bet. And as for this jackass, go back to reviewing cartoons.
Just stay away from actually good cartoons.
Carla Hay of Culture Mix. Wolfman takes longer to show the story's wolf transformation. Honey, this movie was an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah.
You stick to Robot Chicken. That's about your attention span. Oi.
I was going to say, look, this is her attempt at panicking over TikTok being banned for all of 3 hours.
Wolfman, yeah, that would have been a more timely reference. Thank you, Robert. Wolfman takes longer to show the story's wolf's transformation than it does to watch paint dry, which would be a better alternative to watching the sluggish and nonsensical horror movie. Adequate visual effects can't save this mess.
I'm sorry you didn't get him turning into a wolf in the first 10 minutes.
Here's the problem. You're confusing sluggish with boring. Those are not the same thing. This movie is plenty boring, but it's not sluggish.
Dallas King of Flick Feast, a lean, mean, nasty thrill ride that will leave fans hungry. Aroo! Like the wolf. For more from Whannell's personal dark universe.
That's a bit much. You don't need to glaze the guy that hard.
I was going to say, you deserve a black eye for throwing in that 80s reference.
You really do.
Robert Horton of The Scarecrow. The starkness of setting leads to monotony, and the themes are so prominent they remove any real mystery from the air.
Entirely correct.
I don't know about the first half, but I'll agree with the second half.
No, I actually think that was... If you want to do like a single location kind of story, you have to be able to maximize the atmosphere and the tension and the claustrophobia of it. This never really gets there. You can see the idea is there somewhere, but it never really executes properly. That is a little bit of a miss as far as this movie goes.
Nick Johnston of Vanyaland. It's as if, upon looking at all the stunning werewolf designs that have graced screens throughout the decades, Whannell and company have decided not to compete, hoping that the novelty of that choice would be enough. It isn't.
You get the feeling a lot of these people wanted I want to pet the fluffy werewolf.
I mean, who doesn't want a pet dog?
I
came home to 2 of these. If I want to pet the fluffy, I have 2 fluffies. If I want a werewolf, I want to get scared.
Well, some people want the stuff they want everywhere, and they don't want the stuff they don't want anywhere.
How was your inauguration day, Mark? We are recording this on the presidential inauguration here in the United States.
It's also Martin Luther King Day, and it's National Penguin Day and National Cheese Day as well.
Well, Wallace and Gromit will be thrilled on both of those accounts.
Speaking of cheese, Nate Adams of The Only Critic. Monster Mash doesn't have any bite. Derheap?
What a terrible sentence. I feel dumber for having read that.
Agreed.
Speaking of terrible sentences, Jeffrey Harris of 401mania.com, friend of the show.
Be nice to Jeff.
The Wolfman update brings some cool ideas and a grounded, realistic style to the table, but lacks a stronger emotional connection to its storytelling. For a film that wears its body horror influences on its sleeve, it fails to reach those heights. That's pretty accurate.
But again, I don't get why he got the positive marker for that. That's a negative review.
Because he rated it a 6 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes will do this thing where if they can't immediately assess, if your review is like 5 or 6 out of 10, they'll actually ask you, like, okay, so is this rotten or positive? And there's a little space in there with what your score or your overall score is, where they will ask you straight up, like, okay, so splat or tomato.
Oh, look, Toronto ended up winning 5-3. So I chickened out for no reason. These things happen. Speaking of these things happen, Sarah Michelle Fetters of MovieFreak.com, top critic.
Yeah, that is a thing that happened.
Owing more to Native American mythologies involving human-to-animal shapeshifting than to either Lon Chaney Jr. or Kurt Siodmak, or even John Landis, at its core, this is a tragic family saga that cuts deep and leaves a lasting scar.
No, it doesn't. What about this influenced you?
I would say, was she trying to earn brownie points by bringing up the Native American thing? Because that
probably
literally the Native American thing is literally one sentence in the opening scroll. It never comes back to that at all.
Yep.
Emma Wolf of Spooky Astronaut seems like a cute girl.
I like the name of that site, Spooky Astronaut. No, seriously, that's awesome.
I just really love what they did creatively with this film. You're adorable, lady.
You're an idiot.
You can tell Mark likes you because he didn't try to marry you off to someone.
The future ex-Mrs. Robert Winfree, Travis Hobson of Punch Drunk Critic, you motherfucker. With tame action and undercooked tension, Wolfman is both a bore and a drag. Oy.
I feel like you took a few too many drags before going to see this movie.
All right. One more of these, and then we'll call it a merciful night.
How dare you misgender that poor fellow, Mark?
Amy gender is fluid like water. Shut up. Amy Nicholson of the Los Angeles Times, top critic. Speaking of gender fluid, there's so much interior creaking.
How is that a segue?
And so, how are any of my segues?
You bet about 70%.
There's so much interior creaking and panting and so little dialogue or plot that if you close your eyes, the projectionist could have swapped reels with a different genre of doggy style. Dick.
I think somebody was letting their imagination run just a little too wild during the screening.
I think this woman expressed deep-seated issues that we didn't know she had, but had made jokes about.
Friend of the show, William Bibiani of The Wrap, top critic.
Best friend of Mark Radulich. They have a beer together every Thursday.
That is correct. So it's not, he likes the chai tea, but that's fine. So it's not an instant classic like The Invisible Man. I think we can all live with that. It's still a scary, I can't believe you guys were scared by this. It's still a scary and interesting movie about a wolfman anchored by a haunting performance from Abbott. Abbott! Who understood the assignment and went for extra credit.
No.
I thought Abbott's acting was okay. I didn't think it was that bad. Again,
but
it's the dialogue. I mean, I'm sorry. He says a lot of lines. It's like, I don't think anyone could carry those. But again, the scene where he's lying down, struggling to understand and communicate with his wife, and he writes dying on the notepad. It's like, again, I thought that was good. I thought that was a good scene.
All right. Well, folks, that is the end, my friend, of this here movie review. I'm just now seeing your message to me that you wrote in the chat. Anywho, this week, God help us. Yesterday, actually, myself and Jesse did sessions. We talked about Lord of the Rings, and we did a whole song called Pelennor Fields Forever, based on Alexis's favorite Beatles song, Strawberry Fields Forever. I decided that that's true because you like the Beatles, and that's that.
I adore the Beatles, but that's nowhere near close to my favorite song.
It's your absolutely most favorite song ever, and you'll hear no such nonsense otherwise.
See the sky with diamonds. I'm sorry, I had something in my throat.
Oh, whatever, drug addict.
Drugs are the only way you can enjoy the Beatles to begin with.
Oh, for God's sake.
Please let it go. Speaking of enjoying drugs, we will be on the Metal Hammer of Doom Jukebox this Thursday. We will be having a discussion.
See, that segue makes sense.
Led by Cutie Patootie. She bats her eyes at me and she gets everything she wants. Mick Wanamaker. And we will be talking Gwar because, God damn it, fuck this place. Saturday is nothing. Sunday. Guess what's back? It's the Indeciders, ladies and gentlemen, complete with the new theme and a logo. It's fantastic. We will be talking The People versus GCW. That is myself and Harry Broadhurst, whose name I now remember. We used to do those as TV parties. We decided to bring it back, and I said I just want to dedicate just something, a little corner of what we do here, to just exclusively wrestling. So we're back to doing indie shows and talking wrestling news. We'll probably end up talking about Saturday night's main event as well. So that's this Sunday, and that is going to be at 10 o'clock. After I'm done watching the Bills beat the Kansas City Chiefs, I hope.
Mark,
next week
that's a bad bet.
I'm not betting on that game. I might do some player props, maybe, but I ain't betting on the money line. No, sir.
Your invitation to my parents' Super Bowl party has just been rescinded.
I have no idea what we're going to do Monday, right? It says on the schedule, I have Blitz.
Review all the bad calls that go the way of the Kansas City Chiefs because, good grief, that you can't even sneeze on Patrick Mahomes without getting a flag.
Yeah, the Pittsburgh Dad, his YouTube channel, I like, made that joke. Anyway, we are supposed to do a triple feature this Monday, a week from tonight, for Blitz, Conclave, and The Brutalist. We'll see what we actually end up doing based on what happens Thursday when they announce the actual Best Picture nomination. So,
yeah, that might change around a little bit. So, we appreciate all of you understanding our flexibility.
Speaking of being flexible, Black History Month is coming up, and a week from Thursday, we are kicking things off, and it'll be myself, allegedly Shay Tate, and Jason Teasley, who does all the Black History stuff with me, and we are kicking things off with Black musicals. We are doing The Wiz, Dreamgirls, and Purple Rain. Purple Rain. That's what I got going on.
One of those doesn't suck.
Alexis, tell us about the plugs that pay you.
Well, the plugs that don't pay me. First of all, tomorrow night I'll be back leading an onslaught of nerdy discussion about Skeleton Crew. I am limited.
Which dorks do you have on that show? That's what
Andrew Roscoe, Andrew Graham, and David Wright. Dorian had said he was interested, but I have not heard hide or hair from him in weeks.
According to Mick, he's been dead for the last 2 days. Apparently, he's really sick.
He's a vampire, so that could mean multiple things.
Fair enough.
But yeah, frankly, if he does show up, I'm going to give him a very stern warning to put the lightsaber down because we are not going through that again.
Well, I won't be on your show to discuss the finer points of Catholicism, so have fun.
Got that. And are we still reviewing The Bear next week?
That is a great question. It involves a very serious answer. The 29th?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I will be on a TV party hosted by you as a panel member. I got to make you do all the heavy lifting around here, Toots. Yes, I have to start watching now that I'm done watching The People versus GCW, I can start focusing on The Bear.
You should have just watched The Bear.
Well, I need to finish.
God, stop telling me what to do, Dad.
I need to finish Skeleton Crew tonight and tomorrow before the show because I haven't finished it yet because I've been so busy. And then, I have a week to watch the first season of The Bear. God help me.
Well, thankfully, it's not like The West Wing and it's not a million episodes long.
Fair enough. Okay, so yes, as on to the plugs that do pay my bills. I'll go ahead and pull up the page. Honeysuckle Rose Creations, where fashion meets fandom at the intersection of geek and chic. We're in the middle of trying to get some new items put online. It's part of the reason I've been so busy. I do all of my own product photography, and I am very strict on only shooting in natural light. I don't use artificial light. I always shoot outdoors using sun. So I had to wait several weeks for us to actually get some sun because it's January. And I finally got it, and now I'm just struggling to get everything online, including we have over here our new vintage Polaroid camera Scrabble tile earrings and our Cult of the Lamb tarot cards charm bracelet. Adding a bunch of new stuff. In addition to that, these are just the only two at the moment I've managed to get online. We were taking our sabbatical from the con circuit, as we always do in January. Those who know me know I do not work the convention circuit in the winter. I have a very, very strict no driving in winter weather policy. But we are going to be back on the road first weekend of February / first weekend of March, because it's the same thing, where we are going to be hitting Missouri Paracon. That is the paranormal convention. Looking forward to that. It's being hosted by the Belvoir Winery, which is actually one of the most haunted locations in Kansas City. Strangely enough, though, the convention is not at the Belvoir Winery. It's in Ameristar. Go figure. And after that, we got, of course, Planet Comic-Con here in Kansas City. They just announced Mr. David Tennant is coming in as a guest. So excited for that. Bring it on, Whovians, and people who will still admit that they like Good Omens, even if they're going to deny knowing who wrote it.
The number of people, and look, I don't judge people for having different standards on this than I do, but the number of people who struggle to do the I separate the art from the artist thing is a little bit strange to me. And the fact that that line has become more and more, boy, I really hope you're in lockstep with my worldview or I can't enjoy your art over the last 8 to 10 years is a little disconcerting.
Yeah, well, tell it to the people who still come decked out in Hogwarts robes.
Hey, I say that to everybody. I don't have to agree with, if I only consumed art from people I agreed with, I wouldn't be on this show.
How was the main event with Dolph Ziggler?
You mean Nick Nemeth? Don't slave name him.
I don't remember what his real name is, Psycho. Just answer my question.
Nemeth and Hendry was okay. Nick Nemeth is like the 3-star king. That's all he does.
Oh my God, that was Joe Hendry that he was wrestling? Because I couldn't tell in the profile.
Yes, the golden retriever that made a wish to become a real boy, and it came true.
Let me tell you how there's somebody at my work who I didn't realize was a wrestling fan who has a picture of Joe Hendry on their desk.
That's sad.
Best
match of the night. Hang on. Best match of the night, though, was hands down Tessa Blanchard and Jordan Grace.
Tessa Blanchard's back from her exile in Mexico?
Yep.
Wow. Have we forgiven her for being racist?
Depends on who you ask.
Okay.
The crowd certainly hasn't forgiven her.
Did they yell racist?
She actually got no. There was a "she's a racist" chant at one point during that match. Yes.
Wrestling fans are terrible. Anyway,
that event was hosted in Texas.
I keep trying, Alexis, and he won't let me. Are you done with your plugs?
As always, you can find our stores on Etsy and Handmade at Amazon. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok. We're still on there. I don't know what's gonna happen.
Were you I'm curious, were you inspired to go on Red Note at all during the
No.
During the I was not. I looked at that and I went, we're a dumb country. We deserve whatever happened, whatever bad.
I was going to say, it's one, I don't speak or read a word of Mandarin. Number two, it's owned by the same company. So it's there's clearly something else here that no one is bothering to look closely at. I mean, I'm not the conspiracy theory type, but there's so much shit with the TikTok ban. I was just does no one else see the giant red flags waving? And they're not red from Red Note. They're just red.
You know what the
red
worst
with
thing
a little
about
gold star in the corner.
You know what the worst thing about this entire experience was? Poor Jesse. apparently Marvel Snap is owned by ByteDance.
I
So
saw that.
So not only was TikTok banned for like 12 hours, but also anything that ByteDance has ever made that currently is in operation, and only TikTok came back.
Like I said, I have heard so many people arguing about both sides. I just look at it and go, you know what? I have offered up all my info on every social media possible. I've been hacked because of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not
Oh
going
my
to
God.
go.
Jesus Christ, every December I have to get a new ATM card because somehow or other there's a fraudulent charge on there. Literally like clockwork every December.
No, I mean, I have gotten really annoyed with the people like, oh no, TikTok, no, you actually have to socialize. It's like, you know what? There are literally thousands of people in this country who rely on TikTok to make their money, to earn a living. It is not my main source of income, but it has been a massive boon for my company to finding new followers and reaching a wider audience. That is the whole point of social media. So,
Yeah.
but I've also.
Let's put it this way. I didn't go on TikTok because I needed to hear the same pirate shanty sung by a bunch of white women over and over and over again. I went on here because I was told this is where there's an audience that isn't going to commit to 2 hours of nerdy old men and some broad talking about movies for ad nauseum. However, they will watch a small portion of that on TikTok in between, Greg Johnstone in doing various impressions, and a guy putting a map on, putting his mouth on a map of the United States, explaining, awesomeness about jets, or cooking videos or whatever the fuck else you watch on TikTok.
Pretty much.
Why I'm there.
I went on there to get followers for my company. I make tiny little videos showing me making jewelry. I put in tiny little videos of the dogs. For some reason, well, not for some reason, it's because he's a corgi. My most popular.
No. It's not because he's a corgi. It's because he's a dog. Let's put it this way: if I replace all of us in CGI fucking dogs talking to each other, suddenly this becomes an entirely different podcast.
I am totally down to VTube as a dog.
No, I was about to say for some reason, I'm like, no, you know what the reason is. My most popular video right now is an 8-second video of Eddie bounding in the snow as I open the door and he goes out for the first snow of the season, and it is literally boing, 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 boing.
Of course, because he's a cute dog.
He is a cute dog.
Speaking of boing, 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 Robert, your plugs.
See, not enough. That was not a very good segue.
Suck my dick.
I mean, I appreciate the attempt, but I'm not bouncy. Come on. No, go ahead. Try. I'm curious what you were going to say.
Please, we're so close, and I have other things to do.
You can find me covering mixed martial arts and professional wrestling over at 411mania.com. Saturday I covered UFC 311. Sunday was TNA Genesis. Both of which were okay. 311 had a almost last minute, because the day of the weigh-ins, half of the title fight fell apart. So we cannibalized another fight on the card to get Islam Makhachev a title challenger. Again, full report over in the MMA zone. You can listen to me talk about it on the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast if you'd rather listen than read. And I know you would, you filthy, lazy degenerate.
We love our audience.
Some of us are busy. Some of us are busy, and it's easier to read than it is. I mean, why do you think Audible makes so much freaking money?
Because they pay the authors so poorly for licensing.
10, 9, 8.
You asked, and that's actually something I know a little bit about.
No, I didn't ask because I know better.
So again, you can find me over on that podcast. It's reviewing UFC 311, talking a little bit about the news. There is no UFC event this Saturday. Next Saturday we'll be there back in Saudi Arabia in the morning, so they don't conflict with the Royal Rumble. And it's an okay card for a Saudi, fight night. So I'll be previewing that in the upcoming podcast episode. And yeah, I cover WWE SmackDown every Friday, which is 3 hours until at least after WrestleMania. And I'm just sad about it. I'm just sad.
Well, I'm just sad about it as the phrase that pays here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network. So,
Mark, Charlotte Flair is about to make her comeback, and I'm just really depressed.
well, now my daughter will be sad. She hates her. And my
Your
daughter doesn't hate anybody or anything.
Okay, wait. How is it that your wife understands hatred of Uriah Faber, much like I do,
Mhm.
and your daughter understands hating Poochie?
I don't know what to tell you. My son hated Baron Corbin. back in
Well,
the day.
everyone. Okay, look, unless he was bum-ass Baron Corbin, he's always been terrible.
I remember when he was. I want to say he started paying attention. Like at the time that Jonas was old enough to watch wrestling and pay attention to it, he was doing the King Baron thing, and he was like, "This
King
guy's
Corbin,
yeah, this guy's a douchebag."
He sucks.
He does.
And he taps out to Josh Barnett in at GCW. And
I know. I saw
everybody
on air tonight.
And everybody booed it.
All right. Be well for Robert Winfree. Be well for Alexis Hejna. Be well. I have to go watch The Bear now. Be well. Be safe. And be well. Be safe. Yoinks and away. Yoinks and away.
Did you forget your outro?
He's gone full Daffy, folks.
He's getting there.
Be well, be safe, and behave.